So today I'm joined by Ali Qureshi from SideDrawer. He's the Chief Revenue Officer and co-founder of the business. And today we're going to be diving into SideDrawer, who they are, what they do in the industry, in the financial services industry, and where things are going in terms of enterprise software, the financial services industry, and just technology in general. So I'm looking forward to this discussion. So Ali, welcome to the Navirum podcast. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Rory.
My pleasure for our guest today. I'd love to know a little bit more about you and your background before we even get into SideDrawer.
Thanks so much, Rory. If I remember correctly, the last time we were on a panel speaking together, there were two Rorys and a Liam and an Ali on the call. Right. I think there were three Irishmen and myself on the call, right. If I remember.
Kept it interesting.
Yeah. So I'm glad it's you and I having a one-on-one this time to talk about software, enterprise, security, and I guess AI as well. It's a hot topic. So thanks a lot for having me here. Always love having a dialogue with you. My background is I'm an accountant by training, and I got into finance, specifically in capital markets, as my first job after completing my CA designation. And I loved the stock market. It was always a passion of mine. I've always been watching quotes ever since I was about 9 or 10 years old and following my favorite companies. There was an opportunity for me to get into equity research in capital markets at a company called UBS, which is a Swiss investment bank, and worked there for a while, then moved into equity sales, which is the role of helping institutional investors make investment decisions on specific equities. And so that buy this stock at this price, sell this one here at this price, etc. So I was the salesperson, but having an accounting background and a research background, it helped me gain trust of my clients because they were valued the research background, let's say. So I did that, but I've always had a passion for being an entrepreneur. The job was an entrepreneurial job within finance. I had my own book of clients, my own revenue that I had to generate, and it was a profit share sort of a model. So that worked well and allowed me to sort of think about what else I wanted to do in life. And I'm always learning or trying to learn as much as I can. And I just realized that delta started to slow down. And so I wanted to see what else there was available. So the opportunity to start a company came up and I jumped on it. And then we had some great success in the first year. Gaston Siri is my co-founder and he wears the CEO hat. He was running the business for about a year, and then I decided to join full-time and take over as CRO, given my background in sales as well as in finance. I was kind of dealing with financial institutions and financial advisors, so it would seem to be a natural role to be in.
And how did you find that transition? Was it easy or hard from being an employee of a company to being a founder of a company?
It's a great question, and I think given the role that I was in, which was equity sales, it is very much of I don't want to call it a lone wolf necessarily, but it is that type of a role. You are given a set of clients, you have resources available to you through the bank and the organization that you work with, which are other colleagues, equity research analysts, other traders, and so on. And you use them as you need to in order to help the clients and grow your business. Mm-hmm. Everyone sort of operates with that model. So it was quite entrepreneurial and you had to be very self-sufficient in that sense. Obviously, you lean on all the partners in the organization as needed, but the success of the client and the success of the business did rest, say, I'm going to pick a number, 40% on your shoulders and 40% on your research partners and traders, and then 20% on the business, just to make up some numbers there. It wasn't just that you were one cog, in a large wheel or a clock, let's say. You actually did have influence on how you were operating to some degree, right? So I think moving into a role that's more startup oriented, where you definitely have to wear a lot of hats, which is what we did back in equity sales. You had to be selling and build relationships with clients, which is a natural part of what we were doing. I think the transition was a lot easier. I think the challenge might have just been that when you are at a startup, there is a brick wall that you think you're going to hit at some point. So you just have to show results that much faster. And you have to be able to tell a story in a very concise manner to get interest from clients, partners like yourselves, investors, and so on, because time is very valuable. And even if I take Navirum as a partner, why do you want to spend your time working with us? There's other folks that you could be spending those precious resources with, right? So being able to get people on board was a skill set that I had from before, and was able to leverage here as well.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting because I actually years ago I used to work in the prime brokerage in Merrill Lynch, and it
Right.
was the same thing. Like I supported the securities lending desk, and I actually probably the inspiration for even starting this is actually my second business, but the first one was just working with those guys because they were so entrepreneurial in what they were doing. They were running their own book of business. I mean, I had visibility of pretty much everything they were doing, and I got to sit with them on the desk, and I worked on the technology side and. But I could really see how they were running their book of business and they were, flying around London, flying around the globe, in fact,
Right.
in a lot of cases. But I could really see how entrepreneurial it was. And so I think, know exactly where you're coming from.
Right. You understand.
Yeah, exactly. But it still is, it's a it's a big transition as well to running your own company. But so you obviously came into SideDrawer. Did you guys was there a product at the time? Was there a
Sure.
vision?
So the origin story of this was
Hmm.
I was on a flight for an IPO pitch. It was a 12-hour flight. I was headed to the Middle East to pitch a very large oil company. And on that flight, I thought if my plane was to crash, my wife would have no idea where any of our important stuff was
Hmm.
kept.
Yeah.
I have probably 140,000 emails in my Gmail. I have 9,000 files in my Dropbox, Google Drive, iCloud Drive, spread across everywhere. So I thought, having a some place where I can keep it all securely, sort of like our physical safety deposit box at the bank,
Hmm.
where we keep our precious items and like important documents
Hmm.
there. A digital version of equivalent of that, let's say. Couldn't find anything that was easy to use, so I thought, why not try to build it myself? So
Hmm.
I got a designer out in California, helped sketch it out, and then we built it using offshore development team. Definitely had a cybersecurity analyst and a CEO to sort of oversee all of it. But we ran it properly, and we actually got traction
Hmm.
right off the bat. That was a few years before Gaston joined. And then I was able to use that as a way to attract Gaston to the business.
Yeah.
Gaston's background is being the CTO of a company called Flexity, which was Canada's largest private label credit card provider. And they scaled that business from zero to over $1 billion in financing. So if you walked into any furniture store or jewelry store and you needed to buy something for $3,000-4,000 and you needed credit on the spot, they would facilitate that credit adjudication and
Hmm.
allow you to make that purchase. So they helped retailers with sales, point of sale credit. And so having his background, dealing in highly sensitive information, which is credit card payments, managing a team of 60 plus developers, that skill set was pretty significant. And he brought that over to build out SideDrawer from the original concept
Yeah.
of a B2C secure document and data warehouse, let's say,
Hmm.
into a enterprise grade digital vault platform that we have today. So he architected the solution based on that vision and then executed on the business plan.
Yeah, that's great. Like I think trying to find product market fit, like I think is so hard for a lot of companies, no matter what they do. But was there an element of luck in that? Did you do some research beforehand? Like how did you manage to just, I guess, land on something that was a very good fit for the market, basically?
Right. It's funny that the concept of product market fit, I was familiar with it being in
Yeah,
my former role in equity sales, where we're
yeah.
pitching businesses and you're trying to identify whether the company has product market fit. Now,
Hmm.
typically at that stage, these are public companies or very late
Mm.
stage private. So they generally do for the most part. In a startup, it's one of those things that it takes a long time to see if you actually do get it. Obviously, if you have client take up and interest, you have product
Hmm.
market fit in one definition of the sense. There's another definition, which is revenue growth, client churn, retention. There's all these other metrics that over
Yeah.
time you get a sense of, well, did I really have product market fit? And
Hmm.
this is something that we're starting to experience as well, is our product today has grown quite substantially from the
Hmm.
original idea versus even when Gaston joined 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And if we look at the capability of our product today, it's quite vast in terms of what it
Hmm.
can do and how we've helped clients. So then there's an element of, well, do we have product market fit for this version of our product today
Mm.
versus, what it was like 2 years
Yeah.
ago? Because you're always building on it, and then the stakes get
Yeah.
bigger, your clients get bigger, and all of that. So it's a really fascinating question. So I would say, but to answer your question, did we have product market fit, or was there a tremendous amount of research done into it? Yes, I think there was a lot of research done into it, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee product market fit. It identifies a niche. The question is, are there people willing to pay for it? Are there enough people willing to pay for it? And are they willing to stay on it? Given the nature of our product, there is an engagement with the end client. Is there usage and adoption on their side? So there's different levels to look at it. At least that's how I look at it, right? I don't think there's a scientific way necessarily, but that's how I look at it.
Yeah.
And so I think we had very strong early signals because our adoption was very, very high. Even today, if I look at our close rates on leads that come through, you're running a business, so you know that there's a sales funnel that you have. You have folks that come in, you engage them. And I'll throw it to you. We don't really release this much, but we have a 59% close rate on qualified leads.
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we qualify about, it's actually a very similar number, 60% of the leads that come through. So from beginning to end, we have about a 35% close rate, 34, 35%. I think that's actually quite high in the nature of what we're doing. We're finding that we have over 100, well, not over, you can't be over 100. We have 100% retention rate for clients that have more than 2 users on our platform.
Okay, yeah, so you're getting that sort of network effect nearly, I guess, because people are, they're using it in an enterprise and they're sharing
they're telling people about it.
They're telling each other.
40% of our leads on our inbound web-based leads are through referrals. So advisor A tells advisor B and says, hey, I'm using this and my client's feedback is good, or my productivity is high, or I feel much more secure and I sleep better at night. There's different reasons why people use our product, but advisor A tells advisor B comes to our website and goes through our process, which usually involves watching a webinar that we have on demand. And we'll end up closing 1 in 3, right? I think that's really good.
Yeah, it is very good. Those are great metrics. So in terms of the business overall, you guys are, do you see yourselves as a global business, as a North American business? Right. Where do you?
It was always set up to be a global business. And I think I give a lot of credit to Gaston for architecting it in a way that really scaling is not an issue for us because of the way that the business is architected. From a foundational technology perspective, we can serve multiple markets around the world. And interestingly, in the first month that I joined, and first 6 months, right? Nothing to do with me, but we had an inbound from one of the largest European banks. And we went really far down the path with these guys. And ultimately, you being from Europe, you understand that there's a ton of management changes that take place at these European banks. I used to work at one. And so unfortunately, we got caught in that. So that deal never ended up closing. But we went very far down the path with that firm. And it was very clear that, and we didn't have any enterprise clients at that point. And it was very clear that our product is addressing a major need for these firms. They have not come across anything. They had to go across the pond to find a startup that could help solve that problem. It was really, really fascinating.
I think it's like that. Those having a real specialization is a great wedge into like those big enterprises, because I think if you were, I don't know, selling something else, it probably wouldn't have happened. But because it's such a niche that kind of allows you to go up the food chain pretty fast.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We get bucketed as file sharing, and that's maybe what we started off as, which was file sharing. But the idea is that file sharing on its own is nothing new. It's obviously been around since Dropbox, I guess, invented the category or brought attention to the category in 2006 or so. And then you had Box.com a couple years later, and then you had OneDrive and Ignite launch after that. So the concept of file sharing has been around more than 10 years since before we started. However, the concept of a digital vault is new. And if you think about what a digital vault is and how it's different than file sharing, yes, there's an element of file sharing in there because I put something in there to share with somebody or collaborate with somebody. But it's not just outbound, it's inbound, outbound, it's a repository, it's a bunch of other activity that can happen there, such as forms, data collection, data distribution, data analysis, and so on. So there's a lot of things that can happen there. And the concept of a vault is that it's in one compartment and collaborative workspace in the cloud, right? And so the idea of being able to create that for a bank or a large enterprise, we have seen has massive, massive benefits because there's so much activity that's happening about a particular client across so many different areas of the business. So if you take a client that is a wealth customer, but they also have a mortgage and they may also have insurance and they may also have a business that's a customer of the bank. Those are multiple lines of business that have the same common requirements of exchanging information, but it's all done through disparate means and through different journeys and so on. So unifying that is what we've actually been able to solve for these larger firms, and it's providing them a significant amount of efficiency. So, our product, like I said, what we're doing for a bank today is so different than what we were doing for the advisor 4 years ago. It's built on the same foundation, which is what the genius of the architecture is. But also the benefit to the advisor is that when we serve these larger clients, we get an understanding of use flows, workflows, we get an understanding of technology, of capabilities, and we bring that to the advisor so that they can leverage it. And that's been a really powerful sort of boomerang effect that we've seen.
Yeah, like I think I mean, I've seen your product. Like, I think it's interesting that you mentioned file sharing there, because for me, like, it's it's way more functional and there's a lot more utility than just file sharing. Like, it does so much more. But anyway, these things get categorized. So you found yourself getting called into these big banks. So it has that sort of, like, in terms of your growth and trend, has it been sort of like a blend of sort of North American businesses or global, or where did you go from there?
Yeah, we've predominantly stayed in North America. We have some engagement with international banks presently, but US and Canada continues to be the focus. There's no reason why we can't open a London office and start working there. It's just that it brings some complexity to the operational aspect of your business, not in terms of the technology, but just the operations. So today for some clients, we'll do 8 a.m. Vancouver time to 6 p.m. Atlantic time support. When you add a European office in there, then you just have to work those different hours that are related to those, right? And you need to have the technical staff for that. So we do that for the right client size, but to serve the independent advisor market there becomes a little bit challenging because we're not at that scale to support it for those clients there. We've always said that we get the right enterprise client, we'd happily open an office there because that would give us the ability to service them properly. And make sure that we're not stretched too thin on any side.
Is that kind of where your focus is?
So we've got 3 different tiers. We've got the enterprise, the mid-market, and we've got the independent market for financial advisors or B2B customers, let's say, professional services providers. And in the enterprise, definitely we're serving North American customers, but we're also, and the mid-market that we service are generally wealth-oriented customers. And they're either wealth advisors, wealth managers, so large financial planning firms that have 30, 40, 50 people or more. Those would fit into that category. Some large asset managers as well that manage billions of dollars and use our product to replace their client portal and deliver statements, tax slips, and provide a better client experience for their clients, and then also a better referral advisor experience for their referring agents. So we provide that. And then on the SaaS product that we have, the independent market, that's typically wealth and adjacent. So I'd say financial advisors, financial planners, executors, folks that are dealing with clients around their wealth, estate, their financial plan, their investment, etc. So, and insurance. So that definitely is more of a financial services verticals. If you think about our enterprise customers, we're multi-line of business. So we'll be doing business banking, we'll be doing insurance, we'll be doing wealth. They'll have elements of different lines of business there because it's the same product that just scales across the bank and has different use cases. But ultimately, we're driving a lot of efficiency that way. So definitely, I'd say wealth focus, but it's expanding at the larger firm size. Challenges are they vary. So for some firms, let's start off with the journey of the small advisor, independent advisor. They're running a practice. They can service up to 120 families or households, right? What's their biggest constraint? Time. They don't have a ton of time. However, the nature of the financial services industry is that it's very admin heavy, lots of compliance burden on you, lots of regulatory burden on you, which requires you to do a lot of admin work and being on top of that. Our product helps you save about 1 to 2 hours a day. It allows you to scale your practice without having fixed cost admin staff at the same degree. We have advisors who have told us that they were able to run their business up to 180 households versus 120 without having to hire fixed cost admin staff. And this is the kind of feedback that we get from folks with larger teams, right?
Yeah.
So that's consistent. As you grow, so that's addressing that independent advisor or that small team, let's say. When you get into a larger practice, say 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 advisors, etc., there's a much greater compliance burden on you. There's a much greater, and it's actually something what you're much more sensitive about. You'll typically have a chief compliance officer in-house. You'll have someone who's on the legal side in-house, and they'll be making sure that everything is done in a manner that's compliant, and so they're not offside. That's where our product serves. Our product has a significant impact on their business because, as you know, we have a lot of compartmentalization on access, on roles, how you define who has access to what, who sees what, etc. Those sorts of controls are very important to these larger firms because it keeps them out of trouble. It prevents data breaches. It prevents unauthorized access. It prevents employees, something like 26-30% of data breaches happen from employees who accidentally or intentionally are disclosing information. And so you want to limit access like that. So that's where our product serves a great role, in addition to the benefits that the individual or independent advisor had of productivity gains, right? And then as you grow larger from there, you get into cost efficiency or doing a transformation from legacy platforms where maybe you had a certain platform and all you were doing was storing documents on that platform, and it was costing you at the rate of, say, 50 cents a gigabyte or something, or $1 a gigabyte or something. Now through cloud computing and Azure services, you get that essentially for free. It's like 3 cents a gigabyte per month. It's a fraction of what it was. So we come in and we're able to slash the cost that they were incurring before, save a significant amount of money, but maybe replace that spend with our product, which then brings them all this additional functionality, capability, compliance controls, and so on. So that's what we're seeing there. So the challenges vary depending on the size of the firm. And then at the large firm, at a large enterprise, it's really a combination of all of those things, right? They're trying to save money on certain, consolidate vendors, consolidate where they're spending time on integrating solutions that solve point solutions. And those aren't worth the effort because I don't want to just solve one problem. I want to solve 8 problems. And if I can do that with SideDrawer, then I'm going to go down that path. And that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, it's fascinating. Like, I think those insights you have there in terms of the number of, advisors from 120 to 180 households. I mean, this is a huge leap. And I think, the investment pays for itself pretty quickly once that's happened. But like, I think, just, I guess, where we are today, like, we have, so much going on. There's even more emphasis on technology than ever before. And, I guess, what are some of the key challenges, I guess, or kind of requirements that you're seeing at the moment in light of all the stuff that's going on with AI and in the software industry and that sort of thing?
So it's very fascinating to watch this product grow in capability, in usage, in adoption, and impact. It's mind blowing, right? And I obviously use it on a regular basis. We have our own enterprise OpenAI account that is used for internal staff, and we use it because our data is not being used to train other data or anything, or the LLM or anything like that. So it's in a contained environment. That's probably the biggest concern amongst our client base, which is data ownership, data being constrained into a restricted environment so that it's not being leaked, and basically making sure that it's secure from that perspective. I think that's going to be the limiting factor for adoption in financial services properly. I know that there's a lot of SaaS applications that are making it super easy to offer AI capability within the platform. And the challenge that I see with that is those businesses may or may not have proper data security protocols on how they're managing that data. So you might have done an onboarding exercise for a specific SaaS application, but then they turned on an AI capability. Maybe they didn't vet it the same way that you would have vetted it or needed to vet it, right? So that's a challenge. So we've actually turned off AI capability or restricted access to AI features within our existing SaaS applications because we're not comfortable with the level of their data management that they have there. Our enterprise OpenAI account is for us to use only, and we don't put any client information in there. It's more about just how we sort of would engage with a consultant on certain topics, right? And it could be as simple as content management or reviewing transcript calls on certain things. And we actually did a webinar walking through on how we use AI in our company today.
Great.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Just on operational efficiency, it literally saved me like 3-4 hours a week. Right?
Oh yeah.
On an important thing that wasn't being done. So now we're doing it. If we were to do it, it actually would have probably cost us 5 to 10 hours, and we weren't doing it. So now we're doing something, and we're not spending that much time doing it. So which is great.
Yeah.
So that's I think those are the challenges that we're going to face on AI, or we are facing, which is probably slowing the adoption. Or if folks are adopting it, they're not really sure what's happening with their data. So there might be some liability issues down the road. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I think it's the for us anyway. Like there's many things that companies can do with generative AI and with data, like with text, with documents, with phone calls, and every information source pretty much. But we still find ourselves recommending very conservatively what they should do, and we're
Right.
only recommending the practical use cases that add value and the ones that clients trust as well, like those two things. And if you look at it through those two lenses, like really narrows down what can actually be done and what we can actually recommend,
Right.
without creating sort of like high levels of risks for particularly in financial services companies.
Absolutely.
uh, you know
And this is why our product resonates with financial services. There's such a heavy compliance and
yeah,
regulatory burden on them, right?
yeah,
I'm an accountant.
yeah,
There's no the CPA Ontario or CPA Canada. I've not really seen them publish fines for somebody doing something wrong, right? It doesn't happen. I haven't seen it. Whereas on the financial services bodies across Canada, you actually, and the SEC, you actually do see fines on advisors for mishandling data, for firms for having a data breach, whatever it is. You
yeah,
don't see that with lawyers. You don't see that with accountants. You don't see that with other industries, but you definitely do see it with financial services. So
yeah,
something
for
will
sure.
happen where folks will have to basically recognize that what they were doing was not appropriate. That's where our product, we provide the ability for enterprises and mid-market customers to actually own their own data, completely segregated. And that's a winning feature for us.
Yeah.
And it does very well on that basis. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think like somebody said to me years ago, like especially in financial services, that the technology changes all the time, but the industry doesn't really, and I think that like I think that's with all this AI and stuff, the regulations, and it's not going to change a huge amount, and businesses are going to have to manage their data effectively. They're going to have to
Right.
stay compliant, and it makes it probably even harder now because you've got such a like this volcano of data erupting in companies daily, if not hourly, like, and it's like, what do you do with it all? And
Yeah.
and I'm actually seeing companies pushing back and saying, actually, we don't want to bring it into, we don't want to bring in an AI solution. This is going to be too much of a distraction. It's too much of a risk. And we'd rather take more of a conservative approach to it, like doing a proof of concept, or
Absolutely.
just trying something out in a sort of a lab environment early and see how it goes. So I think the industry has a huge amount, like, there's a huge amount of work to be done to
Right.
create the trust and to stay compliant there. I think that like it's these technologies come along every 5-10 years that are game changers. Like, and if you think about like even like SaaS based products, like in banks, it took a long time before they were early adopters, but it still took the guts of 10 years before SaaS companies like Salesforce had real traction in these companies. Because people just didn't trust. They wouldn't even do online banking, never mind use
Right.
like a web-based application
Right.
internally. So I think it's always a laggard, in B2B anyway, the adoption of these software changes that we.
It definitely, it takes time. It's a risk management issue, right?
Yeah,
That's what it comes
yeah.
down to.
Yeah, and as long as there's a chief compliance officer looking over your shoulder, it's hard to do these things. And you probably know that from your banking days as well as being an entrepreneur. So, I think in terms of like your just the plans, I think are you guys planning to sort of keep AI on your radar and see where it goes in the next sort of 6 to 12, 24 months, or
Right.
what's your approach to that internally?
No, we'll have something out very shortly. We've
Yeah.
actually been working on something where, again, our way of operating is to provide a secure environment where data sovereignty, data access, data security, all of those are preserved and maintained for the firm. So the AI capability that we're looking to implement, and this is based on research with our clients on identifying proper use cases and identifying where the impact is.
Hmm.
It's really a data problem today
Yeah.
where they're not able to feed the beast, let's say,
Yes,
enough
yes, yes.
data or accurate data. Uh, I'm not going to announce it here, but it's basically a clue is that that's the direction that we're going in. And our positioning for large firms has always been enablement
Yeah.
to making sure that people can do what they need to do to be more efficient with their time and resources. So our product is going to be more aligned with that, but preserving our data security and access controls and so on. That's an important part of how we're looking at introducing this. We'll have something out very shortly this summer, and we're introducing a new product also that's going to be aligned with that towards the end of this year. So we've already had fantastic feedback from our clients
Yeah.
that we've discussed this with, and we'll be introducing something along those lines. But again, it's going to be protecting your data, making sure that it's managed properly and it's under your control, but then allows you to do what you need to do with your business.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think I was just going to ask you, about your client input there, but like obviously
Yeah,
that's a key part of the way that you guys work. And
huge. We all, going back to the origin of the company, already did the build it and they will come sort of approach.
hmm.
At this stage, it's harder to do because you're definitely going to be introducing things that you need to deploy into production and get your clients to start using it. So we definitely do get a lot of client feedback, and we vet everything by the clients that we're targeting with that product. Yeah.
Yeah. No, no, that's great to hear. So I think I think that I think certainly the whole AI thing, like it is very very disruptive. Like I think that like there's a lot of hype around it, but like I also think that it really is going to change. Software in the future. Like I think it will very much the way people use it is going to change. Like, and I think for me, like I'm still a bit of a software technology nerd, and I was just looking at some of the recent announcements from like the likes of OpenAI, and they brought in Johnny Ive, who designed the iPod and stuff like
Right.
that, and their whole vision around sort of like the whole thing, the consumer spaces seems to be without using a phone at all. It's going to be a lot of
Right.
it is going to be voice and touch based. So I think it's going to be a very interesting future to see how it helps people out. Like, and I think the enterprise SaaS space is going to change a lot as a result of it as well.
It will. You're right. There's obviously the impact on business from a productivity perspective. Something that I think about in the back of my mind is just the impact it's going to have on, those platforms like Upwork and Fiverr, where you
Yeah.
hired somebody
Oh
to
yeah.
make a design for you or code something for
Yes.
you,
Yeah.
or write a blog or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of folks globally that are going to be very negatively affected
Mm.
because now I don't need to go to those platforms to hire somebody for an $80 project. I
Yeah.
can just do it on OpenAI as part of my $20 subscription or whatever it is, right? And that's a very material negative effect that's going to happen from that
Mhm.
perspective, because it's taking out all that work from an enterprise perspective. Obviously there's productivity gains and so on that will happen, but
Mhm.
I think their approach will also continue to be around preserving their walls and making sure that the data aspect is maintained. Because even working with these large firms, we know that despite the massive amounts of AI announcements that have been made, oops, despite the massive amount of AI announcements that have been made, employees are still not allowed to use AI at the
Oh yeah.
company.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's heavily controlled,
For sure.
heavily contained. And so I think it's going to take a bunch of time for that to happen, where people will become much more comfortable, like you said. So the moat on the enterprise side is that around data access, security, and the compliance aspect around it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's a lot of the banks, they're still like, mainframe computers in the bells of a lot of large banks, and different reserve banks and stuff like that as well. So
It was interesting. Sorry, there was a case study that was done on, I think it's Commonwealth Bank of Australia.
yeah,
If it's the right bank that I'm thinking of. But about 7 or 8 years ago, that bank went through a massive digital transformation. And it takes a real heroic CEO of essentially a custodian job. Like if you're the CEO of a large bank, that business is in place, for in most cases 50 to 100 years before you got there. And it will be pretty much the same 50 to 100 years from then. But you've got a pretty good paycheck over that time period. But you don't see massive transformational changes taking place by bank CEOs typically. But this particular bank CEO in Australia embarked on that, and they just said we have to rip the cord and we have to do this. We can't just keep working with the way that we did. And so their share price did struggle for quite some time while they were undergoing that change, but they've come out, I believe, quite well on the other side of it, at least from my recollection from reading the research analyst reports post that and the impact that it had on their business. So it takes a lot of gutso to do something like that. But maybe this is the opportunity, because I think with AI, you could potentially have the impact faster. You won't have to do it in the way that maybe that particular bank did it. So maybe that value will be a lot shallower, let's say.
Yeah, I think as well, like even like after the financial crisis, 2008, 2009, like it was brought about a lot of transformation in these big banks as well. But in the financial services industry out of necessity, and it was mainly driven by compliance as well to avoid
Yeah.
that happening again.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time there was like a lot of new types of financial institutions that just were spun up in people's spare bedrooms, like digital banks and that sort of thing.
Correct.
And I would say we'll probably see more and more of that, I think, in the industry, the stuff that's not necessarily in the banks themselves, but like competitors emerging. So
Correct.
so
Yeah.
that's interesting, an interesting future for sure. This has been a really a great conversation. And I guess, is there any key points at all that you'd like to cover just before we sort of wrap up?
Oh, I appreciate you inviting me on here.
Yeah.
You've been a good partner. Obviously, Salesforce has been an important partner for us, and it's a platform that we use with our enterprise and mid-market clients, and a number of independent advisors as well. So
Yeah.
it's something that we will continue to invest in heavily also, and work with partners like yourself on implementations and client opportunities. For our product, we'll continue to evolve it as we get pulled into different directions with our clients, but all, with the same thesis of protecting data, having a secure way of exchanging information, collaborating with folks, and driving efficiencies. So those are the ways that we add value, and hopefully we'll continue to work with you and others in
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And people want to find you, I guess they can find you on LinkedIn and
That's right.
your website as well on, is it sidedrawer.com?
SideDrawer.com, you got it. Yeah. So
Okay.
LinkedIn is good. SideDrawer.com is great. And you can learn more about the product and what we're looking at introducing, as well as the new capability that we'll be announcing.
Super. Okay. Well, look, Ali, it's been great having you on. I hope to see you next week in Toronto at the
Yeah.
the Agent Force event if we both manage to make it.
Yeah. Let me know which days you're going to be there and
Yeah.
times, and we can coordinate.
I will for sure.